Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Max with BuzzTox here, and I am back with a Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 1 reaction and review, where I immediately give my thoughts on the latest episode of Game of Thrones. And firstly, I have to say that this episode was fantastic. There wasn't any fat on this episode. Every scene had a reason and a purpose. And I love the direction that they're going, and I'm really confident where this season is going as a whole. I thought we saw amazing character interactions. I thought we saw a lot of great scenes between characters. We've seen a lot of great reveals, and we've seen a lot of incredible sequences. But the first thing that really stuck out to me in this episode, and the most prominent thing on my mind, is the concept of power. And I've been talking about this in countless of my Game of Thrones videos in the past. And that came full form in this season. Usually we see the Game of Thrones for the Iron Throne. And now it seems like everything is turning to fight the White Walkers and the Night King. But now we're starting to see a political plotline form between Jon and Daenerys and their claim on who is going to seat the throne. And it all starts with the scene where Jorah takes Daenerys to see Sam. I thought this scene was brilliant. And we see Sam realize that his father and brother were murdered by Daenerys. And even though he had a poor relationship with his father, it's still his father, and he did love his brother. And we see Sam get extremely emotional. And what was once a really friendly Sam towards Daenerys, he starts to become angry and upset. And this just goes to show that Daenerys' actions have real stakes. And that was something that they were trying to tell her in Season 7, when Tyrion tried to stop her in the first place from executing Sam's father and brother. And it was the same when Varys was talking to Tyrion, telling Tyrion that he needs to find a way to make Daenerys listen. What I love most about this episode is it gives me confidence in the writers of the show. They are paying off plot lines from previous seasons. Sam took this information and knowing that Jon was a Targaryen and went into the crypts of Winterfell. And I saw a reunion between two of my favorite characters. And in this scene we find out that Jon is in fact a Targaryen. And he denies it at first, but he starts to begin accepting it. But the most important thing about this plot is the implications of what it means between Jon and Daenerys. It's set up that these characters are madly in love with each other. And even though it took some time in Season 7, Jon is happy to bend the knee now to Daenerys. And there are some implications that Sansa questions him on, that he bent the knee really out of love, but nonetheless he bent the knee. But with the scene with Sam, we start to see what that means. Jon now has a better claim to the throne than Daenerys. But the most important thing is that Sam stressed over and over again that Jon would be a better king. He's angry with Daenerys for what she did, as he constantly tells Jon that he has spared many men, because he knew it was the right thing to do. He's an empathetic king. And in this scene we see Sam truly place his faith in Jon. And now Jon is in a unique situation where the majority of people would support Jon anyway, and Daenerys is now the outlier. And Jon is constantly being pulled between Daenerys and his family. And he needs Daenerys' army and her dragons because she's the rightful queen. But now Jon is the rightful king. And we'll see how that goes moving forward, but Sam asks great questions that really makes me interested in the upcoming episodes. If Jon goes to Daenerys and tells her that he is the rightful king, she would never bend the knee. She would never even consider it. And she wouldn't even consider sharing power with Jon. And I think that speaks to Daenerys' character. She spent so much of her life fighting for the throne that now she's going to refuse it to anyone else, even somebody who is more legitimate than her. And I think Sam supporting Jon over Daenerys is a start. And I think we're going to start seeing this grow throughout Winterfell. And I've said over and over again that this is where Varys is going to play a vital role. In Season 1, Varys did almost anything, working with Illyrio to try and give Viserys a Dothraki army to take the throne. He's always putting his faith in a Targaryen to seat the throne, whoever is the best for the realm. Sam believes that now Jon is the best fit for the realm. How long until that gets into the ears of Varys, the Master of Whispers? And he decides that Jon is the rightful Targaryen, and the one who should rule the Seven Kingdoms. Because they have laid the groundwork in Season 7.
She gave Tarly a choice. A man who had taken up arms against her. What else could she do?
Not burn him alive alongside his son?
I am her hand, not her head. I can't make her decisions for her.
That's what I used to tell myself about her father. I found the traitors, but I wasn't the one burning them alive.
I have 3 large dragons. I'm going to fly them to the Red Keep.
We've discussed this.
My enemies are in the Red Keep.
You need to find a way to make her listen.
Daenerys is not her father.
And she never will be. With the right counsel.
The people who follow you know that you made something impossible happen. Maybe that helps them believe that you can make other impossible things happen. Build a world that's different from the shit one they've always known. But if you use them to melt castles and burn cities, you're not different. You're just more of the same.
Varys is nervous about Daenerys. He thinks that she is rash and sometimes she doesn't listen to counsel. And that's what makes Jon the perfect king. But the key is, at the end of the day, Daenerys will never step down. So I think at the end of the day, it puts these characters in a very unique situation, where people are choosing Jon. And I think over time, people will choose Jon. The Wildlings chose Jon. The Northerners chose Jon. And in this episode, Sam chooses Jon. And I think it will create a very unique dynamic between Jon and Daenerys. And I think this interaction with Sam has let Jon see another side to Daenerys. And he met that side of her in season 7. In that scene, look how Varys looks at Jon. Jon gives her the advice to be better than everyone before her. But now look at that through the context of a king. Jon is now a king. So the key political plotline that we're going to see in this show is now going to be between Daenerys and Jon Targaryen. And who's going to put their faith in who? For who will rule the Seven Kingdoms? And the key issue with that is Jon, and Tyrion admitted himself, that Jon is leading everyone to fight against the dead. He is the face of that army. If everyone puts their faith in Jon and gives Jon leadership to defeat the Night King, then of course they're going to put their leadership in Jon to rule the Seven Kingdoms. It's something that Daenerys can't avoid. And that unfortunately takes us into the Targaryen plotline, where we see a lot of development in relationship between Daenerys and Jon, which is great. We see that these characters really are in love, and we see Daenerys go take Jon to her dragons. And we see right off the bat, Rhaegal really takes to Jon. And even Drogon in certain scenes is fixated on looking at Jon. And Daenerys trusts Jon enough and believes in Jon enough to let him ride her dragon. And he does. And it's an amazing scene seeing them fly through the north. But then we see Jon start to get comfortable. He starts to turn and control the dragon. I think this speaks to his natural bloodline being Targaryen. And I think after Jon finding out he's a true Targaryen and now him riding the dragon, it shows that Daenerys has less and less power. If something were to turn, Daenerys doesn't have her 2 dragons anymore. One of her dragons has now taken to Jon. And because the relationship is really forming together, we see Davos proposing to Tyrion and Varys that they should really consider marrying the two together for a strategic alliance. Because the Northerners don't believe in Daenerys, and Daenerys is not their queen. Aligning her with Jon shows true strength, and it could help build relationships between the two sides. But Davos doesn't ask for Daenerys to be just queen. He asks for Jon to be king, and together they could rule Winterfell and the Seven Kingdoms. But that seems like an idea that's been lost on Tyrion and Varys. They're not invested in it, and they don't think that should happen. But after they find out Jon is a Targaryen, they may think that that is the only option. But the only question is does Daenerys want to share her power? Because everything Daenerys has done through her whole journey of Game of Thrones, she's been taking what is hers. She's been conquering to get her power. Jon has done the complete opposite. He hasn't conquered anything. Jon is just himself, and people flock to follow him. So it's 2 different places of leadership, and it'll be interesting to see how these two combat back and forth. But on one side of Jon's character, he's dealing with Daenerys and he is in love. But the other side of Jon that we're seeing is his family. And first it starts with Arya. The two have an amazing reunion together, where they share their swords, and they talk about Sansa. But this scene is interesting because Arya defends Sansa, saying that she is the smartest person that she knows, and she cares so much about her family and will do anything for them. And Arya simply reminds Jon to remember that. And that is huge. On top of that, Jon has that discussion with Sansa, where she's convinced that Jon bent the knee not because he did it for a strategic alliance, but because he did it because he loved her. And it's that struggle between Jon and the Starks forming together, or Jon being in love with Daenerys. And now Jon being told that he's a legitimized Targaryen shakes it up a lot. Jon finding out that Daenerys burnt his best friend's family changes the way he could see Daenerys. And now finding out all at once that he holds all the power and is on equal footing with dealing with Daenerys puts Jon in a very different position. He doesn't have to bend the knee anymore. He can be there for his family. And he can talk face to face with Daenerys without being his superior. But outside of that, we saw a lot of other great interactions between characters. We saw Arya have that interaction with Gendry and the Hound. First of all, her and Gendry had an amazing conversation, and she wanted Gendry to make her a unique weapon. As to what it is, I'm not sure. I need to go back and you'll see that in my breakdown video. But it also hinted that these characters may be interested in one another. Maybe we'll see a romantic interest for Arya and Gendry. But another key takeaway from this scene is how Arya dealt with the Hound. After everything the two characters have been through, they were still very cold to one another. Because at the end of the day, they're both cold people. But I honestly think this is a tease, and I think later down the line we'll see Arya and the Hound have their moment together where the Hound can actually express how he feels about Arya. And then we see another interaction between Sansa and Tyrion. And together they discuss, first of all, their past, the last time they saw each other, and the fact that they were married. But more importantly, they talk about Cersei. And Tyrion still believes that Cersei is marching her Lannister men north. And Sansa, of course, doesn't believe it. And clearly in this episode, Sansa really had a lot of great moments. And politically, she's turned into a powerhouse. So I think as the episodes go on, we'll see that Sansa is going to be more or less right every time. Just like Peter Baelish says, she sees every battle, every interaction. She plans for every eventuality. In Cersei's case, she knows Cersei. She knows that she will not send her men north. In Jon's case, she knows Jon, and she knows Cersei. She's seen their interactions. She can wager a guess that he bent the knee out of love, and not out of leadership. And the final interaction we get teased about is when Jaime arrives at Winterfell, and we see him staring at Bran, which seems like the spot he's never moved at. I feel like everyone finds Bran annoying, so they just leave him outside. But this interaction ends up just in a cold stare. I think the interaction between Bran and Jaime that we could see next episode isn't really for Bran. Bran is over it. I think more or less it's for Jaime. Jaime as a character coming to terms with his actions and what he's done in the past, and rectifying everything that he's done to make himself a better person. And I feel like that's Jaime this whole season. His journey is to rectify himself and start making the right choices. And I think next episode is going to be a start. And I think they will forgive Jaime, and Jaime will begin his journey of self-acceptance. But one of the more important things we see is more north, at the last hearth. We see Beric and Tormund run into the Night's Watch with Dolorous Edd, and we see them investigate because the Night King was there and totally decimated everybody there, adding a lot more people to his army. But the most significant thing hints at a video that I made a couple days ago. We see the Lord of the Last Hearth pinned to the wall surrounded by a spiral symbol. And Beric hits the nail on the head. Beric Dondarrion says that it represents something. He's trying to say something. And if you want to know what it means, check out my video on how to defeat the Night King. I think this symbol represents a sacrifice. The spiral represents the children of the forest. It represents Targaryen. And it represents what the Night King wants. It's a symbol that he used to communicate to the children of the forest and the First Men when he came south last time. And in the middle of that spiral is the Lord, a child in the middle of the symbol. And then the kid comes alive and Beric burns it. And it's a flaming child in the center of the spiral symbol. If you know what I've been saying over and over again is that Azor Ahai pulls Lightbringer from Nissa Nissa. Lightbringer is not a flaming sword, it's a flaming child. It's a child of Targaryen descent. The weapon didn't defeat the Night King. The truth is that Lightbringer was the prince that was promised. And that prince was promised to the Night King. The child was given to the Night King and it ended the War for the Dawn. It's the sacrifice that has to be made to keep the Night King north. And he's coming south again because he knows his heir is here. Bran, Sam, and Melisandre need to try and discover what the Night King wants, as he's clearly communicating it through these symbols. But the final character we see in this episode is Cersei. And we see her do nothing really special. She welcomes the Golden Company. We find out they don't have any elephants. I'm sure that saved the studio a ton of money. We see Cersei starting to accept Euron, but begrudgingly, because it's a constant reminder that she is alone. She's missing Jaime, the person that she loves, and she's waiting for the child that is his. But the final surprise was Qyburn talking to Bronn and offering him a job to kill Jaime and Tyrion Lannister. It will be interesting to see how Bronn moves forward, but I think this is the ultimate test for Bronn because Bronn was defined as a sellsword, and I think this is going to be his complete arc. If Bronn was asked to do something, he would simply ask how much. And I think over time we've seen Bronn become more hardened and less like a sellsword. In Season 7, Episode 4, he chooses to live rather than the gold. That was the start of it. And I think in this season we're going to see the arc that Bronn chooses his friends or family over any gold. And that will take Bronn out of the sellsword mentality, and then hopefully he can get his castle at the end of the day. Or maybe the tragic story is that he never will.
Till I get what I'm owed. A dragon doesn't get to kill you. You don't get to kill you. Only I get to kill you.
But all in all, those are my thoughts of the key scenes of this episode. I absolutely loved everything about it. And even in terms of the opening credit scene, it added so much more depth to what we can expect of this season. All in all, I think this episode was extremely well done, and I think it paves the way for an amazing final season. It did everything that I wanted. It gave us emotion between characters, it gave us callbacks to past seasons, and brought up more concerns that were raised in previous seasons. But that's my opinion on this episode. Please let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I have many more videos to come, but until next time, I'll see you guys later.